Hey there, horror movie tea sippers.
The following podcast episode will contain spoilers for the movie we are about to review. If you have not seen the movie and do not wish to have anything ruined prematurely, please do not continue to watch or listen until you have seen the movie.
And welcome to the Horror Movie Tea Podcast. Today we are covering The Undertaker and His Pals, which came out in 1966.
This is a Carrie request.
Yes, and it was also voted upon in our
Yes.
new public Discord server. But before we go into the review, let's grab our cups and talk about tea. So, as we've all guessed, I am drinking Plum Deluxe. And because I'm the one holding the weight here.
I can't have a lot of ingredients right now because the little tea sipper. So
Yeah. But that is understandable.
yeah, little tea sipper can't have certain teas.
But I am having the Plum Deluxe Garden Grove green tea. It has green tea, jasmine flowers, rose petals, dried cherries, and vanilla essence.
And I am drinking Mystic Dragon green tea. And it is by the Spice and Tea Exchange in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. It was a donation of sorts, a gift. And this one has Sencha and Dragonwell green tea, cornflower petals, strawberry, and rhubarb flavor.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Hey.
It's a very smooth green tea with good floral notes, and it's very nice sweet. Like, it's not heavy on the sweetness, but it's the kind of sweet where you don't need to add sugar or honey. Like, it's perfect as is. And this one would be good hot or cold. It's good.
But as always, thank you so much to Plum Deluxe for allowing us to continue to do what we love. And I did want to make a quick note, since we've been cycling through the same teas because we're trying to get through our stash first. The affiliate link, as long as you click on the link, you can shop any tea.
Any of their tea.
That you would like.
Yes.
It just essentially puts a cookie into it, so it knows that, So
it knows that you heard about them through us.
Yeah, so the link will be for this specific tea, but if it's not your jam, just still click on the link and then circle to like whatever tea sounds good to you.
If this one isn't your jam, we highly recommend the Reading Nook blend. That is our absolute favorite so far.
Yes. So I think we've been beating
I know, but
dead
it's
horse
so
with-
good. Anyway.
I just wanted to throw that out there because I don't know how many people are familiar with how affiliate links work. So, but anyways. And then, of course, as always, for our lovely tea sippers, brew yourself a cup of tea, sit back, relax, and we hope you enjoy the review. So for the summary, with credit to IMDb.
And you have to on this one, because I don't know how you would word it otherwise.
I mean, it's not too bad. It's not like Phantasm.
Oh, God.
Yeah, but let's forget that movie existed.
Please, can we?
So, an Undertaker and his two friends, who are restaurant owners, make business by going out and kill people and use the body parts on their menu. And then the Undertaker then preys upon the families of those victims to get money for
his business.
Yeah. So for entertainment, I'm sorry, Carrie. And I'm sorry to all of the listeners that voted upon us reviewing this movie. So I don't regret watching it, but it was a movie I could take or leave. But it did have some interesting elements to it. So because of that, it wasn't just a blah movie to me. Like, I do feel like I took a little bit out of it. So I would personally rate it a 5.5. I mean, because the movie was called The Undertaker and His Pals, I was expecting it to be more of a lighthearted type of horror movie. But what I wasn't expecting is the comedy was very subtle. Like, I was kind of almost thinking like a Mel Brooks type of...
It was kind of dry.
Where, like, it's like dry humor, but like, I don't know. On this one, the humor was a lot more subtle, and I felt like it was more serious than comedy, but only in certain scenes. And then it completely flipped script and is like, oh, we're going to heavily rely on the comedy. So for me, it was just a little bit confusing, and it honestly just could be because I was expecting something a little bit different and it didn't completely match those expectations. So that could completely be my bad. But it did have some smart characters, which was nice, where like the employer slash boyfriend of one of the victims was smart when the Undertaker was like, oh, I can, do this funeral for this amount of money. And he is like, oh, great. And he writes it on the contract when he noticed that on the contract there was no price. And you had seen a family just a little bit before that got completely screwed over by the Undertaker because of
all the add-ons and additions.
Yeah. So it's like there were some clever moments I could really appreciate in the movie. But then there's like scenes where you're like, huh? Where like this woman is running away from the Undertaker, and you can see she's on fast forward. She's going super fast, like comedically fast, and then the Undertaker is going comedically slow, where he's like doon doon doon, but then he's like still keeping up with her. And
they changed the music too.
Yeah.
And they switch back and forth on that scene. That was just so weird.
It was weird, but I feel like, I don't know.
It kind of made sense, but at the same time, it was kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I kind of wish, like, I don't know if you got this, but it kind of felt like the movie had some tonal issues. I feel like they should have, they're obviously going for like a more comedic type of horror movie, so I feel like they just should have laid into the comedy, because it going from serious to more like lighthearted.
Silly.
Yeah, silly. That's a good word for it. Was kind of confusing. But maybe it's just because it was my first impression on, my very first watch. Maybe if I watch it again, I can see the more overlap in tones and stuff like that. But yeah, it's like overall, like I said, I enjoyed the movie. I did get something out of it, but it is a little bit slow. And if you are one that tends to prefer more modern movies versus the older ones, I feel like you're going to have a hard time getting through this one.
So, this movie, on the whole, I feel very meh about. Like, I don't really feel either kind of way about it. And normally, I would give it a solid 5. For some of the humor, I actually kind of enjoyed it and laughed a little bit, especially on, like, their menu board.
Yeah, like the breast of chicken.
Breast of chicken, leg of lamb, stuff like that. But yeah, order up lamb's leg. Good night, Miss Poultry.
And then like, oh, do you prefer white meat or dark meat?
Yeah.
And then the guy was confused.
Chicken breast is generally white meat.
Yeah, so that was a bit sus.
Yeah, and he was right to feel that way. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I could not for the life of me, no matter how hard I tried, stay awake for this movie all the way through. I fell asleep like 3 times at the same place every time and had to keep backing it up. And I finally got through the rest of it on like a 4th viewing.
And the movie is only like 63 minutes long. Yeah.
It's only an hour. But I kept falling asleep. And part of that is probably due to the tea sipper, but in making. But
tea sipper in progress.
tea sipper in progress. But the fact remains, I kept falling asleep at about the same place every time. And when I finally did get through it, I only like half absorbed it. So it really makes it hard for me to give it that 5 even. So I'm giving it a 4.5. It is thoroughly middle of the pack kind of movie for me, and I like that it's not super long, because it is kind of silly, and it's not normally my thing. Some of the humor, again, was nice and funny, and I appreciated it, but it felt almost like a semi-serious cartoon, but live action.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of odd. The effects were okay. They could have used some work on especially the blood that was too bright and watery. But, and we'll get to a lot more of this in the realism, but the other effects like the organs and everything were better.
I feel like that's pretty common for like the 60s horror movies.
It is. The bright red really is a high contrast thing, and it really makes an impact to the audience. Or it did at the time. Now it just seems kind of silly and bad. But it just seemed a little runny. You could have made it a little thicker. The characters, though, there were times when I didn't know who was who. And I couldn't bring myself to care about any of them, really. Even the victims. Like, they didn't really have any character development. You didn't really feel for any of them in particular.
Yeah, like the only ones I gave development for, you're like, oh, they're just super horny.
Yeah. So, which I feel like added a little bit to the comedy, honestly. But it wasn't... I couldn't feel any kind of way about it. That's the overall arcing point of this movie for me, is I don't feel any kind of way about it. Mood apathetic. So that's really all I have, honestly, for this movie.
Well, then I guess we will skedaddle on to realism.
I legit can't feel any way about this movie. Good or bad. I'm sorry. I did try.
You run the risk when you request movies from us.
Yeah.
Well, because it's like, you know...
I hope this isn't one of your favorites.
Well, it's kind of like one of those things where... Like, we want to be honest about our opinion, and we don't want to sugarcoat it just because it was a request.
And it is just an opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's just our personal opinion, and that's why we started the podcast, because we want to open up the conversation. And it's like, if you really enjoyed the movie, let us know. Like, I know, just a very brief example before I move on to realism, we had reviewed Carrie 2, and it was a listener request, and we really did not enjoy the movie that much. But there was someone on YouTube that commented like a whole detailed like explanation on why it was one of their favorite movies. And I could totally see their side. It doesn't necessarily mean that my mind was changed, but be able to...
we could see it from their perspective.
Exactly. And it's like, I love the fact that movies, like one movie can branch so many different opinions, because everyone came from a different place in their life. Everyone has like a different viewpoint on life.
We're all viewing it from a different lens.
Exactly, exactly. And that's why I love opening up the conversation and pressing, our listeners to say their opinion of the movie that we reviewed, because oftentimes it brings a whole new perspective to something that we wouldn't have ever seen before.
There have been times where we appreciate a movie and we like it, but someone else's different perspective makes us appreciate it even more as well, and makes us think a little harder about some of the things that we were a little more harsh on. So it's nice to see those different perspectives, and that's what we want in the community, is more viewpoints, more discussion.
And I can't remember which movie it was. I think it was Tetsuo, but there was stuff, a part of it that went way over our heads.
Yes.
And having people explain.
We needed that one. We needed that explanation for sure.
It, like, while I still don't necessarily drastically change my opinion about the movie, it was really cool to know. It's like, oh, that makes more sense. That helps me appreciate the movie more. So, but that's our spiel, and that's why we will continue to pressure everyone to give us your opinions. But anyway.
I don't know about pressure. We will ask for them, but...
I know.
Slow your roll there.
I was being aggressive on purpose.
A little bit. Jeez. All right. Calm yourself, woman. Let's move on to realism, shall we?
Anyways, so for realism.
We have fun during these recordings.
Yep. I am going to give this a 2. Like...
That's fair.
Like... It wasn't so out of the realm of like the story itself about, like, these 2 restaurant owners killing people, and then the Undertaker has to deal with them. Like, as terrible as that sounds, I can totally see something like that happening.
Yeah, I could see the premise itself being a thing.
But it's more like how they executed it. Like, the jokes and stuff, of course, like breast of chicken and leg of lamb. Whenever people obviously knew it wasn't those things, it's like they weren't going to get away very long with that.
I'm surprised the health inspector wasn't called.
Yeah, like they really should have gone with, like, a more exotic meat. Like, oh, this is...
But they wanted to be cheeky about it.
Yeah.
It was like a private joke.
Yeah, like, I'm glad they did it that way.
Oh, yeah.
But from a realistic perspective, is that they wouldn't have gotten away very far with that.
No.
But really the biggest complaint is the fact that they were getting away with it for so long. And then the blood, terrible. It's just like bright
water.
Yeah,
It's like Kool-Aid.
Yeah. But the as you mentioned before, the gore part actually wasn't too bad.
No, yeah, the organs looked really good. Like, the sheen on them was good, the texture, it looked decent.
Yeah.
They didn't really show any muscle or anything over the actual organs like there should have been. But the organ visuals themselves look decent.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's kind of... It's one of those movies like Phantasm where you watch it and it just makes your brain mush and you're like...
A little bit.
You're like, I can't think. So that's all I have for realism. Because it's either I nitpick so many things that we're here for, 45 minutes, or I give more general statements. So, yeah.
A 2 is very fair. I was going to give it that as well.
Nice.
So, it is a movie that knows it's not realistic and doesn't try to be super realistic about it. Like the vat of acid... The huge vat of acid would smell so bad, especially when they put a body in there, and it would take a fair bit of time for the actual flesh to dissolve off of the body, and when it does, you're not going to be able to just pull a skeleton up like that and it be connected. That's not how it works.
No, because there's
in
ligaments
any way, shape, or
and-
form. Yeah, that's not how bodies do.
Yeah, I'm sure if the flesh came off, then the ligaments would too.
Yes.
Because I'd assume that they're like similar. In,
Yes.
Yeah.
They're slightly different texture, but yes, they would dissolve as well. So the tendons, the ligaments, all the muscle tissue, the organ tissue, all of that would dissolve. It would take a while, but it would all dissolve.
And
Which means the bones are not connected anymore.
And it's like we do kind of have reference since a certain serial killer has done that. Actually,
And
I
others.
think several serial
and
killers.
others, but he's one of the most famous.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Especially since there was just recently a series.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's not how bodies do. It was funny for the visuals and everything, and for the audience's purpose, it makes an impact of a sort, I guess. So it gives the audience more context of what's going on, and, you know, it is what it is. But that's not how it works at all. The smell would have been atrocious, and there would have been people that had complained about that, if nothing else, to the health inspector at some point. The quality of the meat and everything. And I'm sorry, what diner serves just meat on the plate?
Yeah, that's kind of nasty.
What gets me, though, is they had a delivery person that was supposed to be delivering, like, veggies and stuff and side kind of things. But whenever they would show a dish, it was just the meat.
Yeah.
So what are they doing with it?
Unless if they cooked it in a broth or something.
Maybe, but we didn't see any kind of moisture at all. Well, let's be honest. The plates that they put in front of people looked dry as hell. Like Sahara Desert dry. The guy had to saw through the meat for the leg of lamb. Which was his first clue that it wasn't lamb. Honestly, lamb is supposed to be a lot more tender than that. But it's just... it makes no sense. There also would have been blood everywhere from them cutting up the bodies, especially with Miss Friday, I believe it was, that they knocked out and brought into the kitchen to look at her organs.
Yeah.
But their area was pretty clean. Like, there was no blood. I found it interesting and kind of hypocritical that the main chef dude that had dropped out or was kicked out or whatever of med school was like, prep the patient while I scrub up. So he was trying to kind of be sterile about it, but didn't fully wash properly. And then he put on gloves, but he had the other dude handle the girl, and he wasn't sterile at all. And then the guy had put a blanket over her, which was also, let's be honest, that wasn't sterile either. Ain't no way in hell. And then he takes his gloves, which we hope were clean, but it doesn't matter at this point anyway, and touches the unsterile blanket and moves it off her. There's been no iodine or any kind of cleaning or anything, antiseptic, nothing on the body. And then the dude who hasn't even washed his hands hands him the scalpel. I don't know how he runs his kitchen. But just seeing how he handles this stuff gives me serious concern. Even if he had used more reasonably sourced meat.
Reasonably sourced. Free range.
Yeah. Well, they were free range.
And cage free.
And cage free. But
Probably not organic though.
they were organic of a sort.
I can't with
They
you.
weren't modified.
No GMOs. Oh.
But it wasn't like actual chicken or beef or pork or anything like that. So I have concerns for the cleanliness of the kitchen and the safety of the food that he was serving, even if it had been other meat, non-human meat. But yeah. I can see the Undertaker gouging people price-wise. There's always going to be slimy people like that tack on anything and everything that they can, trying to get as much profit as they can.
Especially
They're out
through
there.
tragedies.
Yes. They're horrible for doing so, and not everyone does it. There are many that don't. There are so many that don't. But there's always going to be someone.
Price check, even if
Yes.
it's for a funeral.
Yes.
As uncomfortable as it may be.
Yes. But there's always going to be someone out there that has that mindset and mentality. So I can see that happening, as unfortunate as it is. I can't even see, like we said before, the premise of the movie itself happening. They definitely wouldn't have gotten away with it as long as they did. And things were different at the time, but I feel like word still would have gotten around about that funeral director, and he wouldn't have gotten near as much business after doing it like a handful of times. Just saying.
And, like, especially, like, how predatory of him for just, like, standing there and waiting for, like, a loved one to come by the scene and be like, hey.
Yeah, when he's already at the scene or gets there soon after the police are at the scene.
Yeah, that's messed up.
Super sus.
Yeah.
And super messed up.
Like, I feel like I would be more inclined to say no if an Undertaker was like, oh, I'm at the scene of a loved one's murder. You're gonna need a funeral director. Like, no.
That would make me angry.
Yeah.
Like, how dare you have the gall? I am in the middle of a horrible, stressful situation, and you come in here trying to make a quick buck? Seriously?
Yeah, like him giving the final estimate and during the one funeral.
Oh my god, that was awful. Which I'm sure happens, but it's still just
I'd
so
hope they'd have a little
anger-inducing.
bit more tact than that.
I'm sure
Like, at
some
least
would, but
finish the surface.
well, like I said, there's always going to be that one person out there, but it's rage-inducing, honestly.
Yeah.
So, but that's mostly how I see it. There were a couple other things that, again, this movie doesn't take itself super seriously. So, like, the screaming while being impaled through her heart.
Yeah, I was like,
And flailing.
I would assume you'd probably have at least at minimum like gurgling sounds.
Yeah.
There's literally blood into your lungs.
And she was screaming, but there was no flailing or movement
Yeah,
or
just,
anything. Yeah. Yeah. And just other things like that. It was silly. It's not very realistic. So.
I feel like this one would be a good one to watch with friends.
Yeah, it
And
would.
laugh at.
And it's one that you don't necessarily have to pay super close attention to. So,
Excuse me.
that's what I got.
Well, yeah, it's like, I feel like this one you could take it or leave it. Like, if you have some level of interest in the movie, and watch it. You know, you're not going to be scarred for life
Yeah,
or
no.
anything, hopefully. Trigger warning. But,
I'm not mad I watched it. I'm mad I couldn't stay awake for it, but...
yeah. But thank you so much for joining us today, and please comment on what you thought of the movie. If you'd like to recommend a movie, game, or tea and keep up to date with our content, you can find us on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and most places you listen to podcasts. And we also have a public Discord server now. We have postponed any further polls for upcoming episodes until our or your co-host is
The little tea sipper in progress.
is has settled, but it's a good place to go to keep more up to date with like our announcements. We'll also post a lot more readily, like a month or two ahead of time, on like what episodes are coming out, and then also if you want to talk about horror movies, horror shows, or horror video games.
It is also worth noting that we have episodes scheduled through like May. So if you do request,
It's gonna be a while.
it's going to be a little bit.
Sorry.
We had to plan maternity leave. So,
And then we can't do June because that's Shark Month.
yeah.
So essentially, up
Or-
until July,
Shark or aquatic. We haven't
calling it
quite
Shark Month.
decided. Yeah, it's something.
we're not changing the. It's Shark Month.
It's
No matter what movie we review, it's Shark Month.
That's fine. This is fine. We'll just have a shark named Bruce on the set. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you'd like to support the podcast, please subscribe, like, and share our content. If you'd like to support us monetarily, we do have a Teespring and PayPal, or we have our affiliate link with Plum Deluxe. If you would like, it does not affect the price of the tea at all. It just allows us to continue to do what we love. You can find all of the sites mentioned linked below, including the Discord. And until the next time, guys, stay safe and stay spoopy. Bye!